Astralis. A team transformed from being known as chokers to become champions in esports. How did they develop from being a team failing to perform when it really mattered to be a consistent superpower in the top of Counter-Strike Global Offensive? They elevated from suffering huge mental problems outside the game to become owners of 4 major titles, while others failed to follow up. An era was established, built up by high confidence and mental resilience. But how? This is the secrets of Astralis' psychological move from fear to flawless. I will look back from 2014 until today, where the players started in Dignitas and TSM and eventually became Astralis. The roster of the team has changed in these years, but always remained the same core of 3 players, Device, Dupree and Zipex. But how come these players were able to become so much better throughout the years, when their rivals and opponents couldn't manage to keep up? It's no secret that Astralis has been through some mental barriers, like Glaive even talked about before he joined the team in 2016. I don't understand why Astralis keep underperforming. When I was at bootcamp with them, we played extremely well in every practice game, so I guess it could be something psychological at the events. This has led to my creation of 6 different categories which will be analyzed: motivation and goal setting, concentration, self-confidence, emotion and pressure, team cohesion, and professionalism. Let's start with a look at how motivation and goal setting were managed by looking at statements from players. Dupree announced that anything but a victory would be very disappointing from us. Carrigan once said, "Our minimum placing should be the semifinals. Everything else would be a setback from the team." I guess the same goes for the organization, but everybody around the team knows how much of a final for the first time would mean. If we don't reach the semifinals, I see the whole team getting frustrated. And also, we have to go to the final of Katowice. That's what we're aiming for. And we want to win the next major. We don't want another team to win 2 majors in a row. Device said that my biggest motivation when playing CS is obviously winning. Like, I love to win. I have a huge winner mentality. I get mad at myself when I do bad. When we do bad, I mostly get mad at myself. So that's my drive, my will to win. And my teammates would be satisfied with reaching the semifinals, because the competition is so hard. But I really want to play a final at the major. So the final is my goal and the team's goal. Rather than prioritizing the process of developing the team, the players seem to be highly outcome oriented by having their motivation towards winning. Therefore, it creates a mindset with anxiety and pushes players towards playing not to lose instead of to win. Furthermore, they started creating their own pressure by reminding themselves of the importance of winning for both themselves and the organization. This pressure controlled the players' performance, which led to poor results when it mattered most. The players appeared to be more extrinsic motivated to play, and although this can be a beneficial form of motivation, it can have a negative long-term effect if not used in a constructive manner. By not having a determined goal for the team, it can enforce tension within players and uncertainty about the ambitions towards the future. Now, let's see what the players recently said on this topic. Glaive states that grabbing the title is of course what we are looking for, but it's not what's in our head right now. Our heads is to play really well, use the things we did in practice and show that we could beat the top teams. Remember to just relax and just have fun while we play, and we're just thinking of winning 1 map at a time. And we have set our goals, but it is meaningless to talk about long-term ambitions if you miss the goal right in front of you. Dupree explains how the team made the decision to skip last event to be prepared for this major, and no matter the results here, this was the best decision for our team. And it's not alpha or omega if we win the trophy. We just want to play good CS, that's basically it. We want to be the best in the world. We are the best team right now. Device says that we always have the philosophy that if we just play our own best, then it doesn't matter if we win or lose. Now we see the team announces the team goals, and it seems to be a combination of outcome-oriented and task-oriented goals. If we look at the achievement goal theory, 3 factors interact to determine a person's motivation: achievement goals, perceived ability, and achievement behavior. For Astralis, it appears that there has been a significant move from outcome-oriented climate to a task-oriented motivational climate, which has been proven in research to enhance performance for athletes. This, combined with a higher perceived competence, now results in better performance, focused effort, and persistence in competing. Likewise, rather than creating pressure on themselves by being outcome-oriented, the mindset has evolved to use their goals and confidence to create pressure on the opponents. Astralis have a more healthy motivation to play by letting their intrinsic motivation dominate their mindset with a more constructive use of extrinsic motivators. This shows when the players are more focused on playing well and compare their gameplay with themselves internally and not others externally. Now it's time to have a look at concentration and focus. Device talks about the choking. It's always in your head, but you have to try to think of something else and just have some fun before you start the game. If you think too much about it, you will always stress out and you'll be nervous to do your normal stuff. And yeah, you've seen how that goes. Kerrigan mentioned this. The third map we got run over, but if it was a choke or simply not enough experience to get on that map, it's hard to say. Let's see if we can break that curse. Also, Japri says, we've been trying to work out some new stuff and really identify what our major problems were. And then of course, no more chokerino. The former in-game leader, Fetish, said this. But I also want to say that a lot of commentators and a lot of so-called experts always calls us a CT team. It's like they didn't watch Gfinity at all. We struggled only on one T side at that event. The C sets are just ridiculously overpowered. You can only be so confident on a map that's really random and poorly made for competition. During ESL Katowice 2015, the former coach said this in voice chat during a pause in a game. Keep focusing, don't start stressing. Throughout the different teams' lifespans, the fact that they could not proceed to perform when it mattered the most was referred to as choking. From a sports psychological perspective, this model shows how choking is formed and acts within. Conditions that lead to choking for the players were important competitions and to face up to evaluation from peers and themselves. The attention switches to an internal narrow focus about fear of failure and a reduced flexibility to switch their attention towards task-relevant cues. The players didn't have the tools to refine their concentration, which caused them to have an unhealthy focus on external objects or incidents which weren't controllable, like judgments of peers or the technical construction of the game. Also, directions like "don't stress" can enlighten and retain a stressful climate for players. If you are told not to focus on something, it's very hard to avoid, unless you know how. Lastly, it's remarkable how the narrative of the choking team was kept alive for a long period, not only by not performing, but also from acknowledging its existence again and again. And with no tools to fight the mental battle against choking, they got caught up in this narrative of the team. It became the team's identity to be chokers. They didn't fight it off in the media, nor their mindset, which made it a huge factor during their gameplay too. If they needed 2 more rounds to win a game, the narrative and the consequences of choking would probably pop up in their minds. A year after the MLG Major 2016, Device thought he had screwed away from all the choke reputation and so on, but I had a really tough semi-final and that tore me down for a day or two. Eventually I just accepted that it would always be a part of who I am and how I would be remembered as well. And later states, generally having to focus on a lot of things other than the game threw me off for the first part of the major. But after some days I felt like I could adapt and shut out all the things that did not feel were productive for my performance. And the same goes for the team. Care beyond pressure. Instead of feeling the pressure, I used it to my advantage to play better. Up to this day, I am still very proud of that. Glaive says that he has focused upon not letting the surroundings affect me while I'm playing and only spent my mental resources on stuff that I can change and affect. And states, so being fully focused every single day, not just on tournament days, but also in practice. That's what we have been working on the most. The players seem to have reached an acceptance of the choking narrative, acknowledging its existence, but not letting it be the dominant factor on their future performances. This happened partly because of better results in the game, but player statements highlight the importance of the switch of mindset towards what is controllable for them. Their new mindset of focusing on the right things at the right time and not let external incidents interfere with their concentration is a sign of a more flexible focus from the players. To have a more flexible and dynamic focus endorses a higher level of concentration in the game. The absolute top athletes of sports are able to switch their attention between a broad and narrow level of internal and external focus. This appears to also be the case for the Astralis team. The outcome of this has been a better management of different objects or incidents that creates pressure. Instead of letting the pressure dictate their mindset, they use it to something more productive. Self-confidence is a huge part of performing on a high level. Let's see the players' thoughts about this in the past. Fetish said that it comes down to us not being able to get back into the mental state where you know you can win regardless of how poorly you just performed. Eventually we will learn to cope with it. Dupree claimed that he wanted to face Envious the most, because I think that NIP is a stronger team right now, and also because I think we have a mental problem with NIP. I don't know what it is. And he also said, we might still be one of the worst top teams in terms of communication, which may explain the few rounds we get as terrorists. Sonic even announced that they had an identity crisis. We have a hard time finding ourselves. Zipex explained how you could make a statistics that if we win the pistol round and lose the anti-echo, we are probably losing that map. We do that so often that it's hard to come back from. It becomes clear that self-confidence has been an issue for the players. There's a low level of faith in both their own abilities and their teammates' abilities. In sports, low-confident athletes would attribute their failures to lack of ability, thus substantiating the notion that they aren't any good and have a little chance of future success. This is an expectation bias, where the mind jumps to a biased conclusion, which heavily affects performances. The past statements from the players show that their performance has been affected by a low level of confidence, by expecting to fail under certain circumstances. This mindset can also be described as a negative, self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a psychological barrier that can lead to a vicious cycle, where expecting to fail leads to actual failure. This lowers self-image and increases expectations of future failure. If we look at today, Zipex says that we are the ones being the most adaptive and innovative. If they decide to do something in the game which might nerf us, we'll just find a way around it. Dupree told that he thinks it actually plays into our advantage, because they were up so much and we made the comeback. I think they remembered the fact that they almost lost more than they beat us. Dupree also said he hopes that they can maintain a great performance no matter what and keep the strong mental game going, which I believe we are the best at right now. Finally, Device states that we won because we believed in the philosophy we have on the T side. Our T side is usually very strong. We don't make silly mistakes and it makes us kinda hard to beat when we execute. Astralis is now developing their self-efficacy, which is comparable to self-confidence in most situations. Self-efficacy is the perception of one's ability to perform a task successfully. For Astralis, this development partly happened because of verbal persuasion, where these positive statements about their abilities will reinforce self-efficacy, and thus better performance. Furthermore, the team has now broken the negative self-fulfilling prophecy within them. Instead, they are now using positive self-talk internally and externally to produce positive expectation about future performances. Overall, their self-confidence has been improved drastically in these ways, and they are yet again putting pressure on their opponents rather than on themselves. Now let's take a look on how emotion and pressure is managed. We start with Fetish describing that the team was not able to get back into the mental state where you know you can win regardless of how poorly you just performed, but it's a great learning experience and eventually we will learn to cope with it. Zipex even said how the team was tilting and didn't know what to do against Cloud9 ST. And Zipex has a paradoxical answer in an interview saying, we try and not put so much pressure on ourselves. I think we kind of lose a lot when we have a lot of pressure on us to win. We just try and keep ourselves calm in those hectic matches. When we train behind, we couldn't come back. So that is something we are improving on, I think. Kerrigan explained that it's obvious we need Device to perform at the tournament. He automatically has a big impact on our team. At the start of Astralis, Dupree said we are having struggles mentally. We don't play the same way that we do against other teams, and we don't take the same risk that we usually do. I think it's because you always want to prove something against your countrymen. The players express different problems coping with pressure, and emotions connected with it. There seems to be a problem with arousal regulation, which is how well the players manage stressors during performance. The inverted U model can be used to explain the relationship between arousal states and performance. The area of best performance should be where there is optimal arousal, in the middle. Further increase in pressure and arousal causes performance to decline. The players have been in plenty of high-stress competitions, and their statements indicate that they have a highly anxiety-driven arousal, which led to poor performances. The players also appear to be aware of different mental struggles within the team, but have not found a solution to combat them. The team did face many stressors externally from audience, organizations, media and more, but also started creating their own emotional internal stressors within. This happened when the focus was directed on one player to perform, which led to a high amount of anxiety in the team. Onto emotion and pressure today. Here's what Sipek says. Of course there is pressure from some fans. Many expect us to win this tournament. It is great when fans are cheering for you, but you should not feel pressured by fans to perform. Feel the pressure, you will not perform. Device explains that he realized that the only pressure that really matters is the pressure you put on yourself. When you realize that you can control the pressure that you put on yourself, then I think the nervousness and other factors will be easier to control. And I got a bit out of the zone in regards to my T side, and that stuck in my head for the beginning of the half, although I was able to get past it and move on. Bree says that we just took it as any other match, any other team. It didn't really matter to us who was calling for them, we just played our own game. Regarding emotions, Magisk says that my emotions are starting to benefit me more. I've learned that if I can channel my emotions into something better and use it to play better, it's a big improvement. Astralis has found a new way to approach pressure by adapting their mentality to it. It is no longer a mentality driven by anxiety, but rather constructing pressure to something more useful for them. Also, by not letting pressure or emotions overrun their performance, it seems that their arousal level has been modified to a more balanced level. The feeling that you can control a particular stressor, such as a menacing rival or fans, will mean that the symptoms of anxiety, like butterflies in the stomach, elevated heart rate, or sweat secretion, are interpreted as facilitative or helpful towards performance. If your judgment is that you do not have control over the situation, that your opponent is too strong or internal emotions will hold you back, then those same symptoms will be interpreted as weakening or likely to impair performance. The probable consequence is that this interpretation will become a self-fulfilling prophecy and your performance levels will plummet. Astralis players expresses positive interpretations of their stressor symptoms, which has led to a more positive perspective on their game and mentality. About team cohesion, we already saw Sonic announcing in early 2016 that they had an identity crisis. We had a hard time finding ourselves. It's also interesting to see Device explaining how the pregame went at a tournament in 2015. We suggested to play Cash against Nip, and Kerrigan wasn't much for it, because our practice wasn't that good to be honest. In the pregame talk, it was kinda messy and stressed out because Cash was the only map we didn't want. And then he later explains we never really performed under Kerrigan's leadership, and we didn't really have that team feeling chemistry that we almost got instantly with Glaive. About the Dignitas and TSM teams, he said, we didn't have open conversations about obvious things that made our team drift apart. We were all shying away from conflicts that could have kept us together. Instead, we became 5 individuals. There were signs of low confidence in the different teams, and also low confidence towards teammates. The lack of identity and regression towards individuals rather than a team resulted in internal frustrations. This can explain why there has been some changes in the lineup, even though players changed had been performing to a somewhat high level in the game. Furthermore, the different teams have been facing a hard time trusting and believing in the leaders. Motivation, goal setting, pressure and self-confidence can seem meaningless to work on and progress with if a team does not manage to have trust and leadership. There are different barriers to creating a positive team cohesion, which Dignitas, TSM and Astralis seems to have experienced. This has probably been a conflict of task or social roles among the team members, breakdown in communication between members, and surely disagreement on team goals and objectives. Talking about the team today, Magisk explains that there's a great attitude when it comes to talking about mistakes. It's not like someone is mad at someone else for making a mistake. We have great team conversations and we talk about everything, and we have goals for every practice that we want to focus on. The Big states in an interview, I think it's a mix of us trusting each other, trusting Glaive or in-game leader, having the right hierarchy in the team. Everyone is feeling amazing when you play. I don't have to worry like I did in the past. That maybe had an impact on my play back then. And also highlights, I put my trust 100% in Lucas and Daniel, who have the plan in their head. Device claims that they have a unique playstyle and a unique way of approaching the game as a team. And that combined with people being able to do massive stuff as individuals, I think we found a perfect combination of players, roles and mindset. A more positive team cohesion is constructed in Astralis, which is caused by different factors. One aspect is the communication, which has developed in a productive manner, but there is also room for talking seriously about mistakes and how improvement can happen. By creating a hierarchy in the team, it has also endorsed the formation of different roles to the players in the team. Role assignment in a team can create a more balanced working environment and make each member aware and proud of their contribution towards team goals. A newly found trust in leadership in the team has had a huge impact on the performance and mental capacity of the players. The trust gives leaders less stress and endorses confidence and motivation for players in Astralis. The last category is professionalism from Astralis. Divide explains how the disciplines comes a bit from practice. We're one of the teams that practice the least. We work on being as effective as possible and playing our practices as close to the way we play official games as possible. It's a mental state you're in. Knowing every second of a round matters. Magic says Astralis was not like any other organization I had played for. Everything was much more professional. I was surprised by the amount of time they used on preparation, and also it was not the same way I had done previously on any other team. Already at the beginning of the team I could feel how much ahead they were of any other team in the world. Sipix explains about having big staff with them at the events. No, we've been making sure that everything mostly involves the players and coaches. Before matches it's only us, and in the free time we mingle and stuff like that. During the games leading up to them and afterwards, it's only the players. We've been working on how people affect us before and after the game. The players of Astralis have developed the mentality by acting and perceiving themselves as professional athletes, which they indeed have become by structuring practice and environment at tournaments in a more professional manner. Instead of grinding practice 10 hours a day, they have shortened the length but made it more effective. This also contributes to a more concentrated mental state and a healthy relationship between task-oriented and outcome-oriented mindset. When it's game time, not anything else. It's time to perform. Lastly, a visible transformation from silliness to a disciplined mindset is shown in managing interviews. During an interview at IEM San Jose 2015 with Sipix, you can hear Dupree yelling in the background about Sipix's private parts, disrupting the interview for a brief moment. Unlike today, where this behavior cannot be seen from the team, although it's not hurtful to have some fun once in a while. The last thing I want to highlight in this video is which psychological complications Astralis may run into in the future. Although it seems like the mental state is progressively getting better in the team, new issues may or may not rise up ahead. Astralis has signed EasyTag and Yuki to the team, making it 7 players in the team now. This can cause disruptions in the team cohesion and eventually affect the players' self-confidence. Also, a new stressor is introduced, which has never been encountered before. It becomes paramount that the team can manage these new stressors so they can continue producing massive results. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment if you want more content like this. See you later.